Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the Pope's hospitalization.
Yeah.
Which is obviously something that a lot of people are interested in, and it's pretty complicated. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to kind of walk us through what we need to know.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation. I think the first thing to kind of start with is, who Pope Francis is.
Right.
He was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Argentina.
Yeah.
And he became Pope in 2013. And he's been, a very significant figure on the world stage ever since then. And I think he's quite different from previous popes.
Yeah, he's been called, the people's pope, right? He's really made an effort to kind of connect with everyday people.
Right. And his views are quite progressive. And he's been very outspoken on issue like climate change and poverty. And he's even, challenged traditional stances on things like divorce and homosexuality.
So given his age being 88, this hospitalization has a lot of people worried.
Oh, definitely.
Can you call us through kind of what happened?
Yeah, so it all started on February 14th when he was admitted to the hospital in Rome with some respiratory difficulties.
Okay.
And initially the diagnosis was bronchitis.
Bronchitis, that seems like a pretty common thing.
Right, and people get over it. They recover fairly quickly. But in his case, unfortunately, he developed double pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
And the Vatican even reported that it was a severe respiratory crisis. He needed supplemental oxygen. He needed blood transfusions due to a low platelet count.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty serious turn of events.
Yeah.
I know he had part of his lung removed when he was younger.
Yeah, he did when he was in his youth.
So how concerned are the medical experts about this?
Very concerned. Pneumonia is particularly dangerous for older adults.
Right.
And especially for someone with a pre-existing lung condition.
Right.
Like only having one full lung.
How could this even temporarily impact the Catholic Church? We're talking about a global institution with over 1 billion followers.
Yeah. His leadership has been particularly impactful because of, those progressive views that we were talking about.
Right.
He's advocating for environmental protection. He's reaching out to marginalized communities. He's fostering dialogue with other religions. So it's definitely going to have an impact.
Now, some would say that those changes haven't been as big as maybe he had hoped.
That's true. It's a very large and tradition-bound institution.
Right.
Change takes time.
Right.
Some people would argue that he's at least laying the groundwork for progress.
So what happens if he's unable to continue as Pope?
That's the million-dollar question that everybody's asking. And it's, generating a lot of speculation. The process of choosing a new Pope is very, steeped in tradition and secrecy. But
right.
It's definitely going to have huge ramifications for the direction of the church.
Filling his shoes is no easy feat.
Oh, absolutely not.
Do we have any idea who are the potential candidates and how might their views differ from Pope Francis?
Yeah, there are a few cardinals that are seen as potential frontrunners. Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana.
Okay.
He's known for, his stance on social justice and climate change, which would be,
similar to
aligning with Pope Francis.
To the current Pope.
Yeah. But then you have somebody like Cardinal Robert Serra from Guinea, who's much more traditional on issues like family and sexuality.
So it seems like the next Pope could either continue this progressive direction or really take things in a different route.
It's really a pivotal moment.
So what impact might that have on the church's involvement globally?
Yeah, well, if you look at something like climate change, for instance, which has been a focal point of Pope Francis's papacy,
right?
He even issued an encyclical on environmental stewardship. So a more conservative successor might not prioritize this as much.
Right.
And that could have a ripple effect on international efforts.
So what about interfaith dialogue? Pope Francis has really made that a priority.
He has. He's met with leaders from, various religions all over the world, emphasizing understanding and cooperation.
So would a new pope continue that?
It's hard to say. Some might share his commitment,
right,
but others may be more focused on internal affairs.
So it seems like his absence, even for a short time, creates this vacuum that reaches far beyond just the Vatican.
Absolutely. And really what this highlights is his impact on the world stage.
Right.
He's become a moral voice,
advocating
for peace-urging action on poverty and inequality, calling for compassion towards refugees and migrants.
It's pretty amazing to think that all of this started with a case of bronchitis.
Right. It really shows how the health of one person can impact the entire world.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that individuals, especially those in leadership positions, can really have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So while we wait for news on his recovery, it's interesting to consider his legacy, especially because he's being treated at Gemelli Hospital,
Right.
which has a long history of caring for popes.
It does. It treated Pope John Paul II extensively.
So it would almost become like the designated hospital for papal care.
It has.
So that connection to previous popes just adds another layer to this whole situation.
It does. It's like history is unfolding right before our eyes.
And the fact that he's being treated in a place that's so intertwined with the papacy just makes his health crisis even more poignant.
Yeah, definitely. It underscores the fact that he's part of this long line of leaders who have shaped the church.
It makes you think about the continuity and the changes that each papacy brings.
Yeah.
I mean, Pope Francis has definitely left his mark.
He has.
If we step back from his health for a second, what would you say are the key elements of his legacy so far?
That's a great question. I think it's multifaceted. First, his emphasis on social justice
Right.
and reaching out to the poor and marginalized. That's redefined what it means to be a Catholic leader in the 21st century.
Okay.
He's also been a powerful voice for peace and reconciliation,
Yeah.
urging dialogue in conflict zones, advocating for diplomacy over military intervention.
And his environmental advocacy has been groundbreaking.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
His encyclical on the environment was a landmark document calling for urgent action to address climate change and its impact on the most vulnerable people.
Right.
And it's had a profound impact, not just within the church, but on the broader environmental movement.
And he's shaken things up within the church as well.
He has.
I mean, he's challenged the status quo on issues like divorce, homosexuality, the role of women.
He's not afraid to address difficult topics.
Yeah.
Encourage open dialogue.
Whether you agree with him or not, it's a departure from previous popes.
Absolutely.
And it remains to be seen how those reforms will play out.
Right.
So it sounds like his papacy has been a period of both continuity and rupture.
It is.
He's upheld the core values of the Catholic faith, but he's also challenged traditional structures.
Yeah.
And he's really pushed the church to confront the issues of our time.
That's a great way to put it.
And his hospitalization has really thrown all of that into sharp relief.
It has.
We're left wondering about his recovery, of course, but also about the future of the church.
Exactly. The whole world is watching and waiting.
And it's just a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, there's always hope.
Absolutely.
And that we can all make a difference in our own way.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the hospitalization of Pope Francis. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
It's been a pleasure.
We encourage you to stay informed and to keep reflecting on the bigger questions that this event has raised. What does leadership mean in a world facing such complex challenges? How do faith and tradition intersect with contemporary issues? And what role can individuals, even those in positions of great power, play in shaping the future? We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought as you continue to explore these important questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. It really is. And choosing that next pope, that's going to be a huge decision.
Yeah, and it's going to have, like you said, major ripple effects for the church and the world.
Absolutely.
So how might his absence even temporarily impact the Catholic Church? I mean, we're talking over 1 billion followers globally.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. His leadership's been especially impactful because of those progressive views we were talking about.
Right.
Advocating for environmental protection, reaching out to marginalized communities, fostering dialogue with other religions. I mean, these actions have been felt globally.
But some would say that those haven't led to the sweeping change he'd hoped for.
Right. It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
I mean, undeniably, he shifted the church's tone and direction, but substantial changes within such a large and traditional institution, that takes time.
Right.
And some would argue that he's at least laid the foundation.
Right. So it kind of leads to the question of succession. What happens if he can't continue?
Well, that's the big question everyone's asking. And it's causing a lot of speculation. The process of choosing a new pope is very traditional and secretive. But one thing is certain. Whoever is chosen will have major implications for the direction of the church.
And the world.
Yes, and its impact on the world.
So filling the Pope's shoes is no easy task.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. Can you shed some light on who some of the potential candidates are and how their views might differ from Pope Francis?
Well, there are several cardinals considered frontrunners. Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana.
Okay.
He's known for his strong stance on social justice and climate change, which aligns with Pope Francis's views. Then there's Cardinal Robert Serra from Guinea, who holds more traditional views
Oh, okay.
on issues like family and sexuality. So you can see there's a potential shift back towards conservatism.
Right, so the next pope could really decide whether that progressive direction continues or if the church goes a different way.
It's a pivotal moment.
Yeah, so what impact could that have on the church's global involvement?
Well, let's look at climate change, for example.
Okay.
It's been a focus of Pope Francis's papacy.
Right.
He even issued an encyclical on environmental stewardship. A more conservative successor might not prioritize that.
Yeah.
And that could have a ripple effect on all the international efforts to address climate change.
That makes sense. What about his focus on interfaith dialogue? I mean, Pope Francis has met with leaders from various religions.
He has. He's emphasized understanding and cooperation.
So would that continue under a new pope?
Hard to say. Some potential successors might share his commitment, while others might focus more on strengthening internal church affairs. A shift in priorities could affect relationships with other religious groups and the church's role in promoting peace.
So Pope Francis's absence creates this vacuum.
Definitely.
That goes way beyond the Vatican.
Exactly. And it really highlights his impact on the world stage. He's become a moral voice, advocating for peace, urging action on poverty and inequality, and calling for compassion towards refugees and migrants.
And to think all this started with bronchitis.
Right.
It shows how one person's health can affect the whole world.
It's a reminder of how interconnected we all are.
Yeah.
And how influential individuals can be, especially those in leadership roles.
Absolutely. And while we await news of his recovery, it's interesting to think about his legacy.
Yeah.
Especially since he's being treated at Gemelli Hospital, which has this long history of caring for popes.
It does. Pope John Paul II spent a lot of time there.
So it's almost like the designated hospital for papal care.
It really has become that.
Yeah, so that connection to previous popes adds another layer.
Absolutely. It's as if history's unfolding before our eyes.
And being treated in a place so intertwined with the papacy makes his health crisis even more poignant.
It really does. It underscores that he's part of a long line of leaders shaping the Catholic Church.
It makes you think about the continuity and the changes each papacy brings.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic.
Pope Francis has definitely made his mark.
He has, without a doubt.
So if we step back from his health, what would you say are the key elements of his legacy so far?
I think his legacy will be multifaceted. His emphasis on social justice and reaching out to the poor and marginalized has redefined what it means to be a Catholic leader today.
Okay.
He's also been a powerful voice for peace and reconciliation, urging dialogue in conflict zones and advocating for diplomacy instead of military intervention.
And his environmental advocacy has been groundbreaking.
Absolutely. His encyclical on the environment was a landmark document calling for urgent action on climate change and its impact on the vulnerable. It's had a profound impact, not just within the church, but on the wider environmental movement.
And he's shaken things up within the church, too.
Oh, yeah.
Challenging the status quo.
He's not afraid to tackle tough topics and encourage open dialogue.
Right, whether or not you agree with him.
Exactly.
It's a real departure from previous popes.
It is. And it remains to be seen how those reforms will play out in the long run.
So it sounds like his papacy has been both continuous and disruptive.
It has. He's upheld the core values, but challenged the traditional structures.
Pushing the church to face the issues of our time.
He's a complex figure navigating that balance between tradition and change.
And his hospitalization has really brought all that into focus.
It has.
We're left wondering about his recovery, but also about the future of the church.
Right. The world is watching and waiting to see what happens, both with his health and his legacy.
Right. It's all very uncertain.
It is. But it's a reminder that even in uncertainty, there's always hope.
I like that.
And that we can all make a difference in our own way.
Well said. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hospitalization of Pope Francis.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking, and we encourage you to stay informed and reflect on those bigger questions this has raised. What does leadership mean in a world facing such complex challenges? How do faith and tradition intersect with contemporary issues? And what role can we play in shaping the future? We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought as you continue to explore these important questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. It really is a fascinating dynamic. You know, he's a complex figure.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate this balance between tradition and change.
Right. And his hospitalization has really just brought all that to the forefront.
It really has.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, about his recovery, but also about the future of the church.
Yeah, it does. The whole world is watching, waiting to see what happens.
It's uncertain times for sure.
It is. But I think it's important to remember that even in times of uncertainty, there's always hope.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that we can all make a difference in our own ways.
Yeah, well said. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hospitalization of Pope Francis.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And we encourage you to stay informed and, keep reflecting on those bigger questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That this whole event has kind of brought up.
Yeah.
What does leadership mean in a world that's facing such complex challenges? How do faith and tradition intersect with contemporary issues? And what role can individuals, even those in positions of great power, play in shaping the future? We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought as you continue to explore these important questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for having me.